Welcome to Lead Poison.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Lead Poison podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by jgwpainting.com.au. For all your painting and decorating needs, servicing Sydney and surrounds, please visit jgwpainting.com.au to get a quote today. Thank you to everyone who has so far bought something from the online store. Please head to www.leadpoison.com.au/shop to buy something and support the show. Thank you as well for being patient in between episodes, between the floods and everyone getting COVID. It's been a real juggling act organising dates. I actually picked up coronavirus just this week. You can probably hear it in my voice. I think I'm over the worst of it, but to be honest, for a night or two there, it was a little touch and go. It's been rough, but I'm here, I'm back, and I'm excited to get this episode out to you all listening, so thank you again. Today on the show, we are joined by Luke S. Kennedy. Luke is an author and speaker who currently spends his professional life travelling across this great country, speaking to students, teachers, parents, and business professionals, sharing his incredible story in the hopes he can instill some of the valuable life lessons he has learnt throughout his tumultuous journey. It wasn't always so charitable, however. Luke, or Punchy as he was known, has a past littered with turmoil, having been a prominent figure in Sydney's graffiti scene, and because of that stature, found himself both on the giving and receiving end of some vicious and life-threatening violence. Luke was stabbed on 2 separate occasions and was witness to various horrific incidents, some of which were dealt by his own hand. Through the violent and chaotic journey of Luke's life, he, whether by luck or determination, most likely both, has managed to come out on the other side with what he calls a purpose, to uplift and empower by sharing his story. I think most people are always on a journey of self-improvement, and to see a man like Luke transform his own life so dramatically is truly inspiring. Clearly he is wise beyond his years, and for someone to dedicate themselves to helping others, especially the youth of Australia, is truly a respectable and commendable effort. His book Stabbed Ego, A Thug's Journey to Enlightenment is available at www.lukeskennedy.com. I cannot recommend the book enough, and I'm excited to announce we can expect another book from Luke at some point this year. Without any further delay, please welcome Luke S. Kennedy. I've got to say, man, your book, I really enjoyed your writing. It was, it was really easily digestible, I think, but at the same time, it was really thought-provoking, and obviously the story of your life so far is, nothing short of stunning. It's an incredible book, man. So congratulations to you. I know it's been a while since you wrote it, but it's a really good read. I might even give it another crack, and I'll definitely be recommending it to the listeners, of course, and to my friends as well.
I appreciate that, bro. Thank you.
Look, I want to make sure we give the listeners a good idea of your story. It's weird because being in the position you're in now, you've sort of turned a new page in your life's book. And I'm sure as you add to your life's work, your past will become, in a way, more and more distant and potentially more irrelevant as you grow. But that being said, your past is such an integral part of your story. I know you've spoken on it many times, and again, it's truly inspiring. But if you don't mind, let's go back for a minute to a younger Luke. Can I ask, before you were sort of corrupted by the street culture of Sydney and yourself, I guess, what kind of upbringing did you have? It seemed like, to me, from reading your book, it seemed like you had sort of humble beginnings, but certainly a loving family structure. What were those early years like for you in Sydney?
Yeah, thanks, man. And definitely sort of humble beginnings. I was born in Liverpool Hospital, so out at Livo. My parents grew up around Miller, Green Valley, sort of Western Sydney. And from there, having me in Liverpool, they moved to Alexandria, just outside the city. So living there for first, say, 10 years of my life, things as a sort of overweight kid, I suppose my insecurities, my worries, a bit of social awkwardness was always there. I was trying to find myself, trying to understand who I was, where I fit in, who I am, and but it was a confusing time as a young sort of overweight dude. But that being said, my family life and the support that I had in my family, my mum, my dad, my brother and sister, were solid, was really solid growing up. And uh, even though my parents did it tough, living in housing commission and doing it tough all there, we never missed out on much. We'd always be up at Newtown. Dad would take us always out for feeds. We'd be video shop, a Civic Video back then. Just life was simple, but there was a lot of love in my family. But I still had my own internal battles for sure. And growing up around Newtown, my dad was in the boxing scene. So my dad was a fighter, and he had learning more about him as sort of time goes on and meeting some of his old friends. He had a sort of similar teens and early 20s as me, carrying on and fighting and drinking and doing all that sort of stuff, and turning it around through the discipline of boxing and giving up alcohol. He did. So he was always around the boxing scene around Newtown, and I'd go as a little kid and watch at Newtown PCY. So watch him sparring, my dad sparring, watching Johnny Lewis, one of the best trainers of all time, Kostya, all these amazing fighters there, and just seeing, I suppose, the way these fighters were, looked up to and treated, and just the sort of self-respect that they had, like this strong man, and me being this sort of insecure little overweight kid, I saw that as these guys were like warriors, and it's something that I really looked up to and something that I wanted to progress towards. But I've said it quite often that's the respect I wanted, but I just went about it the wrong way a little bit later on.
Yeah, it's interesting that you recognized sort of the discipline and the respect that fighters get in those early years. But as you said, the draw, it sounds to me like you were drawn towards, gaining those aspects of life through other methods. And it wasn't until later on that you really understood that even though the goal might be the same thing, the method of getting to a place of self-discipline is important as well, because you kind of got swept up in other things in your early teens and early school years as well. And I guess the boxing, I know that you wanted to be a boxer when you were a kid, or that was sort of put on the back burner for a little bit, wasn't it, as you were coming of age?
Sure, bro. I was overweight. I wasn't, I wasn't training. My brother was training. My brother started boxing as well. So he started boxing when he was 14. And, I was like 3 years younger than him, 4 years younger. And me around 10 years old, just being overweight. And they'd always try to get me to train. And I'd do a little bit of running and stuff, or hit the pads with the old man for a bit. But I wasn't having it, bro. I just loved my food too much. Loved kicking back on the couch. Loved watching the telly. So there was no training there for me. I would have loved to have gotten into it back then at an early stage, but it just wasn't meant to be at that time.
It's interesting when you get into your 30s and you look back on the things that were available. I mean, they're available to everyone, just, especially lessons from your parents. But you really, I've got things from my mum that I look back on and just think it was right there in front of me. But it took me 15 years to sort of understand, what that lesson was. But I guess that's life in a way. You've got to learn lessons for yourself, even if, the people around you can tell you all sorts of things, but you really need to work on things internally. And sometimes that can take, decades in your case, or a decade.
Definitely, bro. And speaking and talking about that, so the influences of people around us. So, my dad, massive influence. Like, he's my main man. Like, I respect that guy wholeheartedly, what he's done for himself, my life, and his family. And during the time of, I suppose, when I was, overweight, and this young guy, I was always like, look, please get into the gym. I'd love to see you train. I'd love to see you fight. Every young man should should at least have one fight in their life, one boxing fight in their life. It teaches discipline. You have to give up certain friends even. You have to focus. You have to give up food. Yeah, it's like goal setting. And once you're in that ring, he's always said it, once you're in that ring and you come out, there's no excuses. Win, lose, draw. I don't want to hear anything. Once you're in that ring, and there was so many lessons that he instilled through different mediums, like boxing was one of them. And that was something that he always sort of was, it was planted. It was definitely planted, but it just took a long time to sort of flourish. And he, as well, when you talk about influences and people people telling you or giving advice, he would always as well, even through boxing and even through before boxing and after boxing. My dad, he won't mind me saying this, but he was a big drinker, alcoholic, he'd even say it. And during my harsh times, a lot of my drama was around the grog. And he's like, "Luke, you've got to give up the grog, mate. I need you, please, it's killing you. You're going to get locked up. You're going to get whatever." I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're getting blind all the time." And it's just trying to tell me to do something with him doing the opposite. And it wasn't until later, when my early 20s, he found Christ and gave up the grog. And that was a big example for me. So it just goes to show, you can tell people anything, please do that. And you can instill hope, you can provide life skills, you can even plant seeds. But the biggest thing we can do, we're not perfect, but the biggest thing we can do is lead by example and show what life is like when we start, instilling values and morals and be the best version of ourselves. Hopefully people come along that path with you. So that's what my old man did for me, led from example.
Yeah, that's really true, man. I find that with my own kids. Often I'll try and teach my kids lessons that I might not follow myself, or I might not follow up on. And yeah, you're exactly right. People respond much better to actions rather than words.
And none of us are perfect. Don't get me wrong, brother. None of us are perfect at all.
Can you, growing up in Sydney and into school and things like that, can you try and explain to me and the listeners who Luke Kennedy was and where you think he was heading had you not chosen a different path during those early school years?
Yeah, who Luke Kennedy was, man, it's a big question, and I didn't know back then. I don't even know now if it's an interesting one. Who am I? Who am I? I suppose the Luke Kennedy back then just wanted to be liked and wanted to be known, even wanted to be, I suppose, popular, or wanted to be, just fit in and just be a part of it, or even be. I was always, even though I was this big kid, I was always could lead. I was always like a bit of a leader and could persuade people to do things and make things happen, and always sort of like the head of each group I was in, and I just was always wanting to, I suppose, make an impression on people. And starting at school, at high school, my brother was a bit older than me. He was in year 10 and I was in like year 7 as I just started school and high school. And how it all started, like how the slide or the rise, whichever way you want to put it, into fighting and carrying on started. There was a guy that was in my brother's year that was giving me a bit of shit, and he grabbed my throat one time after we were playing footy at school, playing footy, and he grabbed my throat. And I was about to cry, but then, I'm in high school now, you can't do that shit. So then after he let go, I said, "You're finished. You don't even know who my brother is." He goes, "Who's your brother?" And I told him, and you could see the change in his face straight away. So the next day I get my brother, and he's with all the boys, and I told him, and they're gonna go get matey at school. So we're looking around for him, and I'm like pumped to see this guy get pumped, really. And I go to my brother, "What are you going to do? Well, how are you going to?" And he goes, "No, I'm not doing anything. You're fighting." I was like, "Bro," and he's with all his mates who I looked up to, all these guys, and I'm just there. I'm like, whew. So we see this guy, and he's sitting with all a bunch of people, and he looks over, and it looked just like his soul leaves his body as we're walking over. Anyways, he stands up, and I had little rumbles here and there with my brother and boxing fights here and there and sparring, but I never really whacked someone. Being in year 7 to a guy in year 10, that's like fighting a man, the difference there is like huge. Anyways, I walk over and my brother's there, and my brother was going, like just pushing me to do so. And I went over, and mate, he didn't even fight back because he knew I was with my brother. I just threw this right hand, and it landed flush, and it dropped him. And all my brother's mates we're just like pumping up. Just, you got dropped by a guy in year 7, and they're like grabbing me and they were telling everybody, and I was walking away. And I just felt for the first, I was like, whoa, that's powerful. That felt strong. That felt solid. And then people were talking about it for weeks, and I was like, wow. And then from there, it was game time. I was just ran with that, ran with the fighter, known as a fighter. My family's are fighters, and then there we went from year 7.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in year 7 or even any time in high school, any event like that is sort of big news. But I guess looking back, I've heard you talk about labels and images, in your talks and your YouTube videos as well. That was a pivotal moment for you, wasn't it? Because at that moment you sort of decided that you were going to be a tough guy, and you went down the road of sort of fulfilling that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, you talk about who was I, who am I, and I think all of us would come into this. I would say this a bit. We come into this world just pure, a blank canvas. For sure, some generational trauma may be there, some family stuff may be there, but really, ultimately, we're just this blank canvas. And as we go along, depending on our environment, depending on what pops up, we start getting these false identities, these labels, these limitations, these expectations of this person who I think I have to be, and start holding on to past stuff that may have happened or whatever it was, and transitioning from myself just being not knowing who I was, and just all of a sudden, bang, okay, fighter, I can hold on to that. That's who I am now. And talking about who I thought I was, from there, that's who I thought I was, this fighter. And then it was living up to that identity. Because when you suppose get these labels or these identities, these false identities, that you paint this picture in your mind of this person who you think you are, who you think you have to be, even, what happens is things in life, or you attract certain things, or you look for certain things to just be aligned with that label. So from there, I was, okay, I'm this. So then when my mates were getting in an argument, bang, I'd be straight in. If somebody would stare at me, boom, I'd be straight into them. If somebody, because when we get these mind-made identities, we subconsciously or consciously, whatever it is, look for reasons and stories just to solidify that image of who we are. And then bang, that's exactly what I did. I was fighting all the time.
Yeah, man, it's a dangerous recipe in a lot of ways. Speaking of images and labels, I wanted to ask you, is it a case of defining ourselves and giving ourselves images and labels, or even other people giving images and labels? If they were to be positive images and labels, do you think the outcomes are different? Or is the idea of labeling yourself and having a self-image in itself detrimental to being able to, grow and develop as a person? Or is it more a case of just finding positive images to sort of assimilate with?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question. And some students ask that after my talks, actually. I'm like, boom, I love that insight. I suppose even now I get labeled, I suppose, a motivational speaker. I get labeled, I'm a speaker, I'm a motivational speaker, I'm a youth mentor, I do all this sort of stuff. And yeah, that's, I suppose, a label. I suppose it's a job role, or not even a job, it's my purpose. I don't like calling it a job, it's my purpose and stuff like that. However, that allows my true self to shine through, but I don't hold on to that as that's all I am. I know even the positive labels, like, for sure, we want to boost confidence, we want to instill beliefs, we want to even affirmations. I speak about affirmation. I am happy, I am powerful, I am positive. Even all that sort of stuff is we want to boost up, because words are powerful. We want to boost up, we want to empower. And however, even the positive labels we've got to be careful of, because it can create, especially for our youth, it creates a lot of, I suppose, worry, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. Because I use it as an example when I'm speaking to the students, and I'll get back to more in detail about the labels in a second, but just talking about when I'm speaking to the students, because somebody might get called dumb or stupid or whatever it is, and then their confidence drops, and then they stop trying, they stop having a crack, they stop putting their hand up in class, they stop sharing their thoughts, right? So it can limit them to that way because of the negative. However, if somebody might get labeled maybe the best at a subject or the best at a sport, even your most elite players, it goes for these guys as well. So somebody might get labeled the best at something. We use maths as an example. The smartest kid at maths, the best at maths. Then all of a sudden, okay, that's who I am. That's all I'm known for. That's my identity. That's my mask. That's what I'm known for. Mum and dad have all sort of implied it. Teachers have definitely said it. Friends know it. Then all of a sudden, all my mask and my identity is around my grades. But again, it can be a sport. It can be anything. But we use, okay, that's what I'm known for. Then all of a sudden, here comes a maths test or sport, whatever it is. And then, okay, then comes a bit of pressure, right? But pressure's cool. We can work with pressure. But behind the pressure, there's worry, there's fear, there's anxiety, because I picture ahead, if I don't get 100% or close to, or if I don't beat everybody in class, then all of a sudden my whole identity, my whole image, who I am as a person is a failure. And I said, that's not who they are either, because their grades on a paper do not define them. They're all different, right? So it's about, like I said, instilling confidence, boosting up, and maybe having a label of what you do or what you like doing, but it's not holding on to that as that's all you are. That's all I am. This is my identity. This is who I am. Because what happens is, if we attach ourselves to these labels and these beliefs, even if they're positive ones, eventually things crumble, things change. And if that stuff changes and crumbles, then an identity or who they are as an individual crumbles, because that's all they think they are. So it's about understanding, yes, we're going to have labels, we're going to have identities, we're going to have a lot of sort of stuff, but that's not who I am. I'm this pure spirit deep down that can see that. I'm this person deep down that has unlimited potential, that has unlimited opportunities. Okay, I'm using this role as an opportunity in this lifetime, or to progress in life, or to whatever it is. But ultimately, it's not who I am.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, it's tricky. For the first couple of years after I had or just with my daughter especially, I used to sort of pump her up a little bit and tell her she was good at certain things, and then my partner actually pulled me aside a couple of years back and sort of explained to me that it's, even though it feels like you're doing something great by telling her, she's really good at something, and that's her, her gift or whatever, she actually noticed that in those areas there was a there was a lack of effort in comparison to other areas for that same reason. So yeah, it's really interesting. You've got to be really careful. I mean, especially with kids, what you say to them and how you sort of fill them with certain concepts and things like that. It's something I've definitely been considering.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, it's a tricky line, and for parents or for anybody out there, and every kid's different too. So it's about treading that line and just, yeah, it's a trip, especially as a parent with young kids. I'm looking forward to having that in the future. But yeah, it's treading a line, and again, it can be so much pressure on a parent to, I've got to watch everything I say. No. We're all human. We all stuff up, but it's just about the repetitive things. It's about learning as we go. It's leading by example. So there's so many different avenues there and so many different layers to it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's complex. Life is complex.
Yeah, even so being the fighter, right? Known as the fighter, the street fighter, the one who could have a crack and all this stuff. And I held on to that for so long, right? And even the idea of transitioning into boxing eventually, right? It was sort of my way of holding on to that fighter image as known as a fighter, but sort of transmuting it more into a positive sort of avenue. So it was like a stepping stone away from that, but still sort of trying to hold on to it.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so I could hold on to known as the fighter. He can have a crack, but now it's more for a positive. So it was it was a transition. It wasn't ultimately a total release of that label, but it was eventually I totally did release that label that I suppose we can get to later about the boxing, how I suffered a pretty big defeat at the end that eventually got a big sort of enlightening realization behind totally releasing that.
That was a good part of the book, man. Yeah, that was interesting. Well, yeah, we will get to that, man. So, I mean, I guess speaking about labels and things like that, that sort of mind state really took up a good portion of 10 years of your life, sort of during the early 2000s, I think it was. I wanted to ask you about graffiti specifically. I guess graffiti was sort of your introduction to the underbelly, quote unquote. When did graffiti make its way into your life, and how did that come about?
I was 14 at school, and this is when I just started carrying on and stuff. And I met a mate who became my best mate in just at school, year 9, year 10, these little kids. And he wrote Boss, and I'd see him doing it and just around school. So I started writing, and I was writing a Punisher at the time. It was a long one, and it was just popping it up everywhere. And I was terrible, as most are when they start. And then, carrying on, painting down the drains here and there. And it's never really something I really wanted to get too much into. I was just enjoyed it because my mate was doing it. And yeah, this went on for a while. And then I met one of boss's guys that he knew around the area that was older. He was like, so we were like 13, 14. Boss was 13, I was 14. And we met Smoke HR. Boss already knew him, but I met him for the first time. He was probably 18, 19, and met him. And I'd see his tags everywhere. He was always along the blue line, and he was always on rooftops and just in different spots. And I was like, "Fuck, that guy's off his head. How cool!" And then meeting him, that's where it started opening up. We met Smoke, started hanging out with Smoke. Then he took us on the lines one night. Did my first piece. He sketched us up, and just the mission of that, the first taste of painting, of cutting open the fence to get on the lines, and then jumping on the train lines, the rocks, and hiding when the train came, and just 2 o'clock in the morning, just going up and painting Penzas Wall, and just kneeling down and watching these guys. There was a few other writers there, and I was just again, I suppose, well, not suppose, it was definitely like, as earlier on when I was that kid, I was looking up to the boxers and the fighters as like gods. Now I was doing that towards these guys that were well known in the graffiti scene, and I was like, yeah, that's okay. Let's do this. I want a piece of that too. So this was like '99, and then I did a piece that night, and we'd always be sitting around sort of Smoke's room, and I only met him and a couple other writers. Then people would just rock up. Big Schemo.
For sure. Shout out to Schemo.
Yeah. He rocked up. One night. It was funny. Like, I was, again, just a little kid, and he rocks up, and he just sort of rocks in the door. He's like, "Doing, lads." and he rocks through, and he shook everyone's hand except mine, and he sits down.
That's interesting because I've been trying to decipher, obviously in your book, you've used
Who's who,
yeah, you've used different names for publishing reasons, I'm sure. So yeah, that's really interesting.
And to protect the peeps, I suppose. Yeah,
for sure, man.
For everything,
Yeah.
Anyways, he rocks up, and he's wearing, short shorts, and he's got that strut on him, and it's the same. It's just the same matey we see now. And he sits down, and he's talking, whatever. And then I was sort of talking a bit and started chatting a bit. And then at the end, he gave us like a bit of a 2-finger handshake to say goodbye. So we're just hanging around there at Smokies for a while. Met a few of the HR boys, and always wanted to be in that crew big time. Always, like, they were known for, like, the 2000. I might be jumping around a bit here, but the 2000 New Year's Eve 2000. I rocked out with Boss. We went out to town hall, just the two of us in the city, and we're looking for the boys, for the HR boys, and we saw Smoke and all those guys. And I saw Smoke. He whacked some guy, punched some dude at town hall, and some guy that crossed him out or something, whacked some matey. And then I was like, whoa, these guys are pretty heavy. Like, there was probably about 20 of them there, and all fighting, all carrying on. And then I was like, oh, I want to get in that crew. And we were in a crew with a different crew, us sort of younger guys, like Schemo's younger brother and cousins, and just around the area. Us younger guys were in our own crew, and we always wanted to get into HR and was painting. But I saw my opportunity to get into it, but as a fighter, because I was known as fighting. They love fighting. They love anyone that backed them up. So I'm like, hey, cool. I've just got to back these guys up. I've got to fight. I've got to carry on. And then, I actually had a boxing fight with Schemo. We had a fight. He won't mind me saying this. We sparred. We had a spar, and I went really good. I went great. And it was the first time in front of all of the HR boys that I fought. And from there, like, Schemo, and I thought, because back then, Schemo was heavy. Schemo, wasn't really known for fighting. Was way for fighting in other ways. And I thought, is he gonna, I suppose turn on me or whatever? But he respected me after that, and I never respected him more since then. And we just grew as friends, and from there it was just step by step.
Yeah,
And
that was another big moment, and another pivotal moment in your book and in your life, I guess, that was sort of revolved around fighting and violence, which is whether it's coincidence or whatever, but it is another big moment in your life that was sort of sparked by sparring, as you said, or fighting.
yeah, fighting. That's right. And that's what it was about, just gaining respect. Like fighting, and I couldn't paint the best at all, but I could fight, and the respect I was getting from that, I was like, yeah, cool. So I was just sort of climbing up the ladder and getting into trains. I always wanted to paint trains. Trains was like obviously the bit like I just loved it. Loved the idea of I hadn't done a panel at that point, and I was 15 years old. And then how we got in the crew, another big sort of step up the ladder was well, there was a layup, a track work layup, and Schemo, a few the other boys took us there for our first panel. We rock up, and we're hiding, just watching the trains, just sitting there, fresh Tangara, ready to go. No seckies, nothing there, just waiting there. We're just hiding in the bush, and we hear some track rocks across the other side of the tracks. I look up, and there's three other mateys. They're all backpacks. We're like, cool, other riders. So we sort of creep over, and it can be pretty tense during that time, like not knowing who these guys are, not knowing if it's beef, not knowing if we can paint with them, not knowing whatever it was. But usually for us, it was beef. Regardless, we'd find some reason to fight.
Even at a layup at 2 a.m, you could still find trouble.
Yep. Exactly. An unmanned train just waiting to be taken for like it's going to sit there for another 5 hours.
Wow.
And really, it sat there all weekend. It sat there for 3 days. And so then it was beef though. It was beef as it usually is, and it was game time. I won't go into detail about who they were, but it was beef, and it was big fight. And
it's got to be particularly dangerous having a fight in those sort of conditions, I would imagine. Not that at the time, I'm sure you didn't give a fuck, but just thinking about sort of having a punch on in, train rocks and on the train lines, that's scary stuff, man.
That's right. We're just sitting there, and then it was, got it back. Like I respected these guys who they were, but got to back my homies up, and it was just straight into it. And then after that, that's when we got dropped in and started painting heaps, painting trains. Trains was what it's all about. Obviously for us back then, we're just really getting into trains, doing panels most nights, and pumping yards, and more than that, we're fighting. And it was just growing. It just got bigger and bigger, and then beefing with other crews, and then crews were forming, and it was huge. It got massive. It got really big.
Yeah, I mean that time in Sydney was huge. Graffiti was huge. There was a lot of people involved. You would hear stories, and I mean HR at that time were really one of the most respected and feared crews to come across in Sydney at that time. Can you describe sort of the atmosphere in the graffiti scene in Sydney during the early 2000s and what it was like to be a part of it?
Yeah, it was violent. It was violence. It was heavy, and we'd meet up at we will we'd meet up at Town Hall steps most nights, just drinking, drugs, carrying on, and some nights at Town Hall steps there'd be 100 of us there, different crews from like out west, a few of the boys from out west, southwest, and us, 100 deep. Like you couldn't do that. What we're doing, you couldn't do that now. We'd be there when a fight would break out, and just argue, and then if we get much from there, we'd go to I suppose Hyde Park, carry on there, and then we'd hear maybe that there'd be a layup somewhere. Then when a car would come, we'd jump in the car and we'd go paint train. So it was violence and painting, and drugs. We and I saw, when I first started painting, it took a long time for me to get recognized in terms of like being known. Then I remember after the first fight, that's where I suppose my name and reputation really spread. And I was like, hey, cool, the painting's good, but if you fight someone, it spreads quicker.
For sure. Yeah.
And I remember, like, I hadn't been known by anyone, hadn't ran into anyone unknown, and then I was out with Boss, we were out stealing paint with different hardware stores, hardware house it was back then. I remember I'd go in there and dack a few cans, and then I saw this. So I'm standing in the aisle, and this big dude comes over, massive guy, and he just grabs, like, bear hugs this whole tray of cans, and then goes into the next aisle, and then sort of walks back into my aisle. Not only a few seconds later, and they're all gone. I'm like, what's going on there? And I took my 1 or 2 cans, happy with that. The plastic coats back then. I walk out, and matey rocks up. He goes, "You're Punch and Boss, eh?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." And it was news, big news.
Wow. Yeah, for sure.
He goes, "I heard what happened at the layup. I heard you boys got the." And I was like, "Whoa, news knows who I am." You know, like, these guys were people that I looked up to, like, in the graffiti scene for ages. And then all of a sudden, he knew who I was. And I was like, again, that the fighting's what it's about. So we'll paint, like I said, just painting trains a lot, but fighting more than that. So we'd be jumping in the back car most days, just looking for other riders, just to fight. And then, yeah,
Probably the reason I skipped a few back cars and waited for the next train, I reckon.
Yeah, lucky lad, I would have got you. I'd be playing. Yeah, it was violence. But you know what? The people and that I was with back then, like, even, you know, Schemo now, he's an incredible dad. Like, what he does for his family. Enter as well, great dad. Like, these guys that we all went through some heavy times. You know, everyone's got their own path now. Everyone's, I suppose, you know, still have some demons, you know, like we all do. Everyone's got their own, I suppose, their own insecurities, their own limitations, but others have really gone on different paths and have families and have gone really, really solid. So it's
yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I know. Yeah, I do know. You know, I don't know any of those guys personally, but I do know they've grown into some pretty commendable human beings, man, for sure.
Sure. You know, not online, you know, people have different perspectives, and, you know, we've all made mistakes as well. Like, but these men, what it comes back to us always, bro. If you're looking after your family and you have kids and they're your focus, then everything else just disappears. As long as you're looking after your family, you love your family, and you're being a good man for your family, then that's life at its best right there.
100%, man. Were you at all interested in graffiti as an artistic endeavor during those years, or was it more the culture and the people in the scene that interested you? I mean, did you spend time drawing, and are you sort of artistically minded at all?
I was always doing outlines. You know, there was always, I suppose, Star Wars on a VCR in the background, and we're just sitting in the room doing outlines, and the boys were smoking and stuff. I was always doing outlines and wanting to progress, but I wasn't the best. Even I did a piece for a mate's, what was it for his birthday? It was about 4 years ago. It was the last time I painted, and it was probably one of the best pieces I've done, because back then I was really in my head about wanting to look good, wanting it to whatever it is, or worrying about getting stomped by crews behind me or whatever. So I was always in my head, but now I suppose I just got out of my head and into, I suppose, my body, and just painted and let it enjoy the experience. And yeah, it was a cracker. I really liked it.
It makes a difference, doesn't it? I didn't paint for quite some time, and then sort of got back into it over the past couple of years. And yeah, I found that I actually progressed a lot over that time of not doing it, just for the same reasons. You're in a different headspace.
For sure. Yeah, a different headspace. That's right. It's just more relaxed, I suppose. Yeah, just in your body and out of your head.
Do you think about ever painting again? You know, you said 4 years ago. Do you think it's something you'll ever do in the future? Pick up a spray can and even do a canvas or anything like that? Does it interest you at all?
Yeah, for sure. I still have mates now that are writing. Others have some incredible businesses because of mural art. And a good friend of mine now, Anthony Jones, AJ Art. He owns a company called Urban Art Australia, and bro, he's dominating the like what he's done for his business. And he's always, you know, come out for a paint, come do a paint. And yeah, I'm definitely keen. Even, you know, I look at trains now because I love trains, man. I love just painting trains. And I'd never paint a train now, obviously. But looking at, like, when I'm in Sydney, I see a train, or when one of my businesses were at a gym, across it was from Mortdale train yards, and I just look at the trains and I'm like, whoa, just memories come back, and the feelings come back. Just that first spray on the train, and hanging out with my with the boys next to me. But the idea of painting a train would just it brings up so much.
It's the ultimate act of rebellion, and yeah, it's very intriguing. I can tell why people really spend a good portion of their life doing that once they start. It's addictive, I can imagine.
100%. And there's people now, still painting, which is great. But like I said, I wouldn't paint a train, but I'd love to get back to and do a few walls for sure.
Yeah, man, that's cool. It's good to hear. I guess ultimately graffiti led you into a world where you found yourself becoming a renowned street fighter and leader of the infamous Sydney graffiti crew that we mentioned before, and someone that, I mean, I don't want to speak out of school, but I guess you were feared by many. Reading your book, I quickly understood how in those days things could turn violent in literally the drop of a hat. It was quite shocking to read all the stories, and it seemed like every other day was some sort of chaotic, drama-filled, violent event, and it was it was sort of eye-opening to read that. Amongst all the benders and substance abuse, it must have been a really stressful environment. How were you feeling internally during those times? Did you shelter yourself completely to the reality of what was happening, and or was there a part of you that sort of understood that things were pretty crazy?
Yeah, big question. Just before that, so the idea of when you're saying I was the leader of the crew, so just want to outline this. I worked my way up, and when the main guy was locked up, he asked me to look after the crew while I was inside. So I wasn't the leader of the crew, but I was definitely up the top and helped out while one of the boys was locked up. So just wanted to outline that.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, it's tricky saying, and I did recognize whether or not I should, put it in that way, but I thought,
No, I appreciate it. I even said in the book, because
you'll correct me if any of my terminology is wrong. It's weird speaking about, sorry, I'll let you answer the question in a second, but it's hard to speak about graffiti, especially because I know that, graffiti is really an underground culture. And when you're on a microphone talking about certain crews, you've really got to be careful that, not out of fear of consequence, but you've just got to pay respect to things that happened in the past, I think. So it is tricky to get the terminology right.
exactly, no, and just paying respect to, I suppose, to reality.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
suppose it was I said it in the book, on the back of the book, I think it is the leader of a violent street fighting crew, whatever it may be, and for sure, like, I was at the head right up the top and one of the main boys, but the guy that started the crew was the leader. He led the crew, and when he was locked up, for sure, we helped out, and I was looking after the boys and one of the leaders, but I wasn't the leader. I just wanted to outline that, man. I always really introspective. Always had, and I think I've a lot of the main boys, a lot of the crew, everybody, have, I suppose, the people that find themselves in scenes like we were, even yourself, I can hear in your language, are like creative and introspective and have some deep insight and thoughts. And sometimes those deep insight and thoughts can lead to greatness. Other times they can eat away at us and lead to addiction. And at the time, I was distracting myself from that true self, that voice in the head that, brother, this isn't right, brother, your dad, your parent, you're a good, but and the demons as well, the heavy voice, piece of shit, you're this, you're that. I had the internal demons for sure. I had the internal moral compass. I had all that stuff, but I didn't allow myself to feel it because I was always distracting myself from them. I was distracting myself through substances, getting on it. Drinking was my big one, bro. I was an alcoholic. Drinking was my big one, and drinking, drugs, and even painting. Painting was a distraction. All this stuff. It was just not wanting to sit still and feel and understand who I was and feel what came up. It was always a distraction piece from that. And I was incredibly jealous too. Jealous with with painting, with if somebody painted on my line, or if somebody painted our yard, or if somebody got up more than me, or if somebody tagged that, like it felt like I was getting eaten away at, and I just want to just get into this rage because identifying myself as that, like I said earlier, as that writer, as this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is ours, this is us, we're the crew. And when somebody else sort of did something that was against that, it felt like they were taking a part of me, and that meant that it was game time. It was like, let's do this. So I was incredibly jealous. I had all these, I had demons, I had insecurities, but I just drowned them in substance abuse, and even now, like there's the past year, bro. The past year in particular, I I realized, with help from some incredible men that are doing some great work for community and culture. Some incredible men have have helped through this process, because I'm still learning, bro. I'm not perfect. I'm still making mistakes. I'm still learning, and I've realized that the distraction piece for me, and the distraction now isn't fighting, isn't doing all that. The distraction now is maybe even phone, maybe even reading a book, maybe dating, maybe whatever. The distraction, there's always been a distraction piece, and realizing that, and getting away from the distractions and just sitting still for a couple of hours, bro. Just really sitting still, and having some time of not doing it, not even meditating, because even I found that as a distraction. I was doing something, right? But I know it sounds weird, meditation being a distraction, but just
No,
now,
yeah, I
just
can understand that for sure.
yeah, now just sitting still and allowing stuff to come up, bro. It's hard. It is hard. There's shame there. There's guilt. There's anger there. There's regret. There's all this stuff, but without feeling it, without really honoring it and feeling it, it's just always going to be down there bubbling away, and letting it pop out in other areas. So it's been a big year, bro. It's been hard. It's been a lot of cries, a lot of understanding, like feeling the guilt, feeling the shame, and really feeling it without distracting. And since doing that, it's life continued. It's been hard, definitely, but life continues to, I suppose, evolve and get better, and just understanding where these past things are coming from, because I didn't honor a lot, bro. There was some traumatic times, man, through that violent graffiti, through that scene, man. Like stabbed, saw a friend get run over by a train. It was like uh, death, violence, and that trauma, bro, gets embedded in the DNA, and without, I suppose, honoring that and just sort of going by day to day and just drinking, or not even drinking, but just like not just even thinking about it or feeling it, then ultimately it's bubbling under there and controlling our lives.
Yeah, and I think, I can't speak from a woman's perspective, but from a male's perspective, it's something that we generally find ourselves doing quite a lot, isn't it? Bottling things up and not allowing things that have happened in the past, or the way that we feel, to come to the surface, out of fear of, I guess, affecting that image that we hold ourselves to.
That's right. Yeah, and because it can be hard, bro. It's really hard, and it can be hard to feel emotion, especially as men. We're not used to it. Women are embodied, and they feel their emotions, and they can access their heart like greater than, like, I won't say for all men, but for majority of us, because we're guarded, but touching into your emotions is a superpower.
Yeah, 100%, man. You just mentioned some of the traumatic things that have happened in your life. And when I was getting ready for today, I was really toing and froing about whether or not I would ask you about certain things, because I didn't want to make you repeat things that have happened in your life that were unpleasant. But I did want to ask you. You mentioned a friend of yours that got hit by a train. In the book, his name is Deny. Can you tell me? And I think before I ask you the question, or ask you to tell me the story, I think the reason I decided to ask you about this is, I know that you speak to a lot of school age children, and even my own life, looking back on how many close calls, just small decisions can really impact your life. And luckily for me, that, and luckily for you as well, there's been times where I zigged, and if I had have zagged, things could be totally different. But I think this story with your friend Denai in the city is a really good example of how even a small decision can really impact you for the rest of your life.
Yes, he was a young guy. He was wanted to meet the crew. He was a young rider. Wanted to meet the crew and we're just drinking at mine. And we left my place and went into the city town hall steps as we did. And he was around all the, like, introducing to all the boys. And he was blind. He got blind. He was tripping all over George Street. He was hammered. I'm like, boys, we've got to get him out of here. Let's get out of here. So we're going um, at Town Hall Station. We're going down the escalators down to Blue Line to take him back home. And he pulls his pants down and starts pissing on the escalator. And, we're just all laughing. And we hear, he scream from behind. We look up and there's the transit police. We called them the Grey Dogs back then.
Grey Dogs, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a while. Yeah.
And they're great. And my matey freaks out and sort of takes off. And they run past us and we're just laughing, We just run down laughing, whatever. He's going to get pinched for pissing, who cares, whatever. And there's a train on the platform and he was blind. He jumps down, bro, to try to get away from the transits. Goes to sort of crawl under the train. And the train started moving and we just screaming and you hear him screaming too. And train's gone and then he's there, bro. And his whole arm's ripped off and half of his right hand as well. So I grab him. He's up on the tracks, pick him up on the platform, jumping up on the platform, and he's laying back. He looks up and he's trying to stand up, bro, with his arm that's not there. He's like grinding the bone into the concrete, into the tiles, just trying to stand up. Please, just begging, please, brother, just stay down. And he looks up at me. He goes, "Punch him, I'm gonna die." And I'm just like holding on to him. I said, "Please, brother, just keep your eyes open. Just keep your eyes open." He's looking up at me. He's gone like grey. And the bystander comes. It was peak hour, bro. Like, it was women are freaking out, like kids. It was heavy.
Oh,
And
really? For some reason I suspected it was quite late at night.
nah, that was like 5 o'clock peak hour.
Wow.
Yeah. And a bystander, some matey, gets his suit jacket off and we're trying to stop the bleeding. And it was chaos, bro. There was blood everywhere. And I'm looking at him and he closed his eyes. And I sort of smack him a bit. And I said to him, just as a sort of a desperate attempt, I knew how much he respected the crew. And I said, "Brother, if you stay alive, I'll put you in HR. If you keep your eyes open, I'll put you in." He goes, "You swear?" I said, "Yeah, I swear, bro." And I was just sobbing. He's just a kid, And I was begging him and paramedics finally arrive. I'm holding onto his face and just sobbing. And police come and an officer sort of grabs me and pulls me away from him. And I shrug him off, go back to matey, and then another one comes and grabs me from behind. I turn around and sort of whack an officer, pepper sprayed, thrown to the floor, and he gets taken to he was in a coma for 2 weeks, and so strong, bro. He survived. He pulled through, just a machine. He was bleeding like through that for ages before they came, and he was an absolute strong little machine, and he's going good now. But yeah, it was obviously an experience that changed many lives that night.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people wouldn't have made it through that, I would assume. Just hearing you describe the injuries, they sounded pretty catastrophic. I mean, to have your whole arm ripped off, I imagine there's a lot of blood loss there.
Massive, man. Yeah, massive. The tiles, it was everywhere. And even just those, like, I don't, and like that, during that time, that was like a Tuesday night, bro. Like, it was like, that was life back. That was life. And then the next night we'd be out, knocking people out. Like, it was.
So at that time, I mean, what was it like after that? I mean, that sounds like it obviously is a very traumatic event for you and for your friend. How were the weeks after that? What was your mind state like? I mean, for most people, that would play a huge role in,
For most people, that's right. Yeah, it didn't.
It didn't for you, did it?
Getting blind, fighting. It was just another was in the paper too. It was just another. It was another. Oh, look what happened. It was, oh, this is what happened to me. I saved. It was another part of the ego. It was another part of, look what I did. It was another part of the big story that I attached myself to because I was there. It was just another part of that bullshit. And yeah, and again, those traumatic experiences, bro, like the sounds, the noise, the visuals, the stuff that gets into the nervous system, that stuff gets embodied in DNA. It is literally traumatic to the body. But I just didn't even really honor it. And yeah, then stuff like get stabbed, like all the stabbings and the fights, it was just continuous.
How did you, when you finally did, and I imagine there was a moment where you did think about that time for the first time, since sort of clearing the haze of that world, how did you reconcile with that particular event? I mean, it must have been pretty difficult even years later. Do you still think about it now? And how do you how do you reconcile with what happened that evening?
I received just an addition from that. All these years later, it was probably about 5 years later, probably longer than 5 years since I, turned things around and started, I suppose, just turned my life around. I received a message from him, and I think he was with his girlfriend at the time, and they sent me a message saying, "Thanks so much for saving my life." And I just felt like a complete fraud. I took him out. He was out there. I was the one that took him out, and got him and drinking with him and carrying on. And I felt like this, just this feeling. Here he is thanking me, but I felt like this fraud. And again, just sitting with that, okay, where's that come from? Why is that guilt there? Where's that guilt from? Is it because I took him out? Is it because I really haven't felt the emotion of the past? Is it because I haven't spoken? And just because so many different emotions come up, and we sort of pigeonhole itself as because of that happened. But really, there's some deeper messages behind it, and really sitting with that and understanding what it was about. It was because I had the, I suppose the experience embedded in me without actually having honored or felt it, and doing that, and even with a lot of stuff from my past and really feeling the emotion behind it, it transmutes it and allows it to sort of leave our body, and we can use it for other areas. And what I do now is speak to youth about it to allow those lessons to transmute into something where I can help other people through them.
Yeah, I guess it's part of the difficulty in changing yourself, isn't it? Is that you've got to turn around and look into yourself and sometimes face things that you've probably bottled up and left in the dark corners. And that's the difficulty. I guess some people think, well, whether or not they think or not, but sometimes it's easier just to put those things away, traumatic events, and just to not face them. It's a hard thing to look at, when you think you've made a mistake, or especially to the extent where there's injuries involved and things like that. You mentioned, and I guess while we're talking about sort of bad things that happen, and I don't want to dwell too much on negative things in your life, but you did mention that
part of it, man, all good.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were stabbed. I know you were stabbed on two separate occasions.
Yep.
On both occasions, you could have easily died right then and there.
Yes.
Can you tell me the events that led up to you being stabbed, and maybe how this idea of trying to fulfill your ego almost killed you and subsequently another person as well?
How do I start? So when I was stabbed the first time, there's another rider, and we're having beef with different crews, and by now people are getting, I suppose, sick of us, fighting and being known, carrying and sort of being known as the main fighters and stuff, and other crews weren't taking as much shit anymore. They were like forward merging with other peeps, and it was game time. There was people, that progressed to weapons, and
things were coming back full circle, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy in particular, he tried to he had a rumble with one of the boys a few weeks before it, and I said, I'm going to get him. I'll get him. Don't you worry, I'll get him. And then I was on my way to the city with one of the boys. We're just on the train, and we look at one of the stations. We look at one of the stations, and there's a bunch of riders there on the platform. Just look like they're waiting to get shots of panels or whatever. And I look, and it was matey that rumbled my mate a few weeks earlier. There he is. I'm going to get him. So our train didn't stop at that station. It was a fly through. So I got off at the next station, and it was close to that station. So we got off there and just ran the to the other spot, and was going to get him like sort of back as I was leaving the station, not on the platform. Anyways, as I'm running to this spot up the back alley, we see him walking towards us. And as soon as the guy saw me, I could his whole face just changed. And I'm like, let's go, let's do it. And as soon as I said that, he reaches down his pants and pulls out a knife. And every opportunity, there's opportunities obviously within it, like for me to turn around and just let it go, or just, get it another time. Matty's holding a big blade, but again, I was with one of my homies. He was a bunch of his mates.
Your ego wouldn't allow that, would it?
Oh man, and it's so split. It happens in an instant. I'll speak to the students about this. When we really become intuitive with our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, when we really become introspective and observe our actions and our intentions, what you'll soon notice, what I speak to the students, and really for all of us, whenever I suppose we're going to base a decision in our life, whether it's something that we want to do, a great idea, a business idea, an opportunity, a possibility, a relationship, or something that we don't want to do, something that doesn't feel right, most times we don't stay in our heart and go with what feels right or wrong for us. Our first instinct, it happens in a split second. And when you become intuitive enough, you realize it happens in a split second. Oh, I'm with this person. What are they going to think? Stranger over there's watching. What are they going to think? What's this person? Okay, matey's with another crew. They all know I bitched if I run. And it happens, boom, like that. And then we base our actions on everybody else's opinions, perspectives, expectations, and our own ego of living up to this identity. And then we make an action.
A decision in a split second, even in the face of danger, and even to the detriment of ourselves, and these decisions can make lasting impacts.
Exactly, and again, it goes back to the idea of the ego. The image is more important than the actual our actual life. I was looking to risk my life to enhance my false one, and so knowing that what my homie with me would probably even not, but my ego told me that he'd think I was a bitch if I took off. Other mateys would talk about it, and then really matey got one over me. I'm a fighter, and I took off. But even though he had a knife, it was okay if I did, but nah. Split second, bang! I run straight ahead. I'll go on, then stab me. I didn't think he had it in him, and he reaches forward and just goes boom, takes this big swipe. And I suck my stomach in, and it just sort of boom, just misses me. Oh fuck, he's gonna stab me. So then I jump in again. I jump in and I went to whack him, and we rumbled a bit, and then he just went boom. And I didn't really feel it. It was just more like this sudden shock of him stopping, and then me, and he sort of stopped, and I look at him, and then it was like we were in our own world. It was this really eerie sort of feeling. And my mate's fighting, like rumbling with one of his mates, but we were in like our own world, and he was frozen. And all of a sudden, boom! There's blood pouring out my back, and I lean over my shoulder and I hold on to the wound, and it's pouring out. And I just look at him, and again, ego kicking. Okay, you're finished, bro. You wait till I get you for that. And he takes off, and so does these boys. My mate rushes over, and he's like sort of sobbing. Bro, let's put pressure on it. So he's putting pressure on it, and I'm struggling to breathe. I'm like and blood, like blood's coming out of my mouth, and I'm like standing there, and a shop attendant comes over. This was like in the street, bro, just a normal street. A shop attendant comes over, and he goes, mate, because I was struggling to breathe. He goes, mate, he's either got you in your heart or your lung. I'm like, oh, cheers, bro. No way to make me feel good about it.
Any other options?
Yeah, give me something else, man. And
so did you recognize in that moment that it was quite a serious wound? obviously if you've got blood coming out of your mouth. And it sounds like you recognized in the other fella's face that it was quite serious as well.
Yeah, bro. It was just this. It was, but again, like it's just boom. It's like in my mind, and fuck. And then my vision. I was in my mind. I'm like, I can't. I. It wasn't about me dying. It was my like, boss, I got stabbed. Oh, dots. Wait till people hear about this. Oh, dots. Oh, I'm gonna
Already
get him.
thinking about the
Yeah. I'm gonna get him back. Oh, it's and I think I mentioned it in the book as well. But then I'm sitting there and I look down. I had my new TNs on, right? And these things, these TNs were things that I held like they were just my everything, new pair of TNs, and then this blood's just dripping on them, and my blood, and I was just like, usually, I want them so clean, even scrub them with toothbrush and everything, and I'm like, uh, it just this contrast of just this really insightful moment of they just became just incredibly insignificant with my blood, which could potentially bleed me out, was on top of them, and I'm like, what? And it was just I had this really like deep moment there, just even in that of these possessions, this physical stuff, these Nikes that I rumble people for, even, or that were just everything to a rider, or to our crew, anyways. And it didn't mean anything, bro. It didn't mean anything, and I was about to die. I thought I was going to die, and then coppers come, um, the ambulance come. They chuck me in the back, cut open my shirt, chuck me in there. The ambulance will get back taken to RPA, a place that I frequented pretty often. And
Yeah, you did go there quite a bit in the book, didn't you? Or
man,
in
they
your
knew
life,
me, like
yeah.
the nurses knew me first name. Like I was getting knocked out I'll get to that in a second, but I was fighting or broken stuff all the time. And so I get back to the hospital, and then it was a punctured lung. So the knife went in my shoulder blade and punctured my lung. And they're telling me that I was extremely lucky because it just missed my heart by a few centimeters. And he just took a stab, man. He just went bang. He had his hand bent at like a little bit of a different angle, bang, done.
Oh, it's all
And
over.
oh, what? And from there, like it's I I uh, I'm in hospital, and detectives were coming in, whatever. My old man's telling them to go away, like he doesn't want to speak, and they kept coming in and pushing about who did it and all this stuff, and wasn't saying anything. And then for weeks, man, I'm like, I've got to get him, and got to get him back, planning all this stuff, and I I had to have like this tube in the side of my ribs in my side for a while, just to drain all the blood out of my lung. And it's amazing, the human body. So it just recovered itself. No surgery, nothing. The lung just went, sweet, yeah, combined, and just did its thing. The intelligence of our bodies are incredible. So, anyways, a few weeks later, I'm sitting at home just with my girl at the time, just chilling out. I talk about this to the students as well. There's when we're at home, not in front of our crew or our people or our friends, we're really ultimately our true self, our weird, wacky self, no one to impress, just being ourselves, right? And then I get a phone call, look, it was one of the boys, and as soon as I see that name come up on the screen, the mask comes on, the false identity, the person who I thought I had to be, the big front, and I even spoke different. I was like, hey, what's doing? Like just that voice. And I speak to the students as well about this. And anybody really, because we all do it. I say there's little subtle actions in our life that take us away from who we are deep down, our true self. A subtle action, and it's the little subtle actions with big consequences, right? And even the subtle action is if when you start becoming really intuitive, you'll notice around certain people or certain friends that you might speak a little bit different, to what you normally speak like, or you might use words you normally wouldn't use. And and I say, to anybody, not just students, to anyone, like if you ever feel like you have to speak a little bit different to hang out with certain people, or use words you normally wouldn't use to hang out with certain people, and they're bringing you down, ultimately they're not your people.
Mm. That's a good
You know,
sign, isn't it? That you're not staying true to how you truly
Exactly.
feel, or your true self. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that,
Sometimes I feel like I got 7 or 8 of those, 7 or 8 different me's sort of existing at once.
yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, sometimes we have to play the game. Like when I'm speaking at businesses, like I'm myself when I'm speaking on stage. But to organize an event, I'm speaking to big. No, I'm still as myself, but I just got to watch my p's and q's a bit, depending if it's a woman, if it's a man. You've obviously got to play certain roles to get a certain outcome for sure. But it's about what you're embodying as a person, and if that change is bringing you down or bringing you up, and so then I speak to him, and my matey that calls, I'm like, hey, what's doing? He goes, matey that stabbed you, he's at a party. He's going to go get him. And the internal thing, it's like, oh, not really. I'm here with my girl, but again, what's he going to do? Yeah, come get me, bro. Let's go. So I go out to my parents' kitchen. I'm still living at home, and I open up the kitchen drawer and I pick up a big blade. I'm standing there. I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm kill this guy. He's going to kill me. I'm like, what's going on here? So, you promised revenge. You've told the boys you're going to go. So I put the knife down the side of my pants, got the front. 4 of the boys rock up. They get in the car. Nobody was speaking. A couple of words here and there, but it was this thick energy, this it was dance, man.
Yeah, you
And
describe that in the book. I think it's really yeah, really interesting to read that. Yeah.
yeah, I was just saying it, and I'm like, inside my head, I'm like, I just want to go home. I want to go home. But then I'm at the front of this party, the music's pumping, and I run up to the front, boom, boot the door through, just rush it, and running around, just throwing his friends on the floor, screaming, where is he? Where is he? And for sure, it looked like I was looking for him, but on the inside, man, I'm like, please don't be here. Don't be here. Like, please don't be here. But, and I've got this big knife. And so after a few moments, I felt like a few hours. I'm like, he's not here. He's not here. He's not here. I'm like, yes. I found out he was in the backyard at the time when I booted the door and jumped the back fences. And
So he was there, but he just heard you guys
apparently,
coming
yeah,
in.
yep.
Wow.
If he was inside, I was in a rage. I would have, on the outside, I would have killed him, and or he would have been ganked up too. Who knows what would have happened? But that for me, it was a perfect outcome because I could get the cred without doing the deed. Back then, it didn't happen, but everyone talked about it like it was. And then from there, bro, I was chasing, like there was times where I'd chase it, where we'd hear about him somewhere and I'd rock up and just like there was so many times where I was close to getting him. And it was, I'm so thankful now. And yeah, the relationship with him has been an ongoing one. And even recently though, now, we're mateys on Facebook and we like each other's stuff, so we're cool.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
he was just wearing his mask then, bro. I was wearing mine. It was self-defense, really, for him. It was just we're just both caught up in this world, and he's a good guy. He's a cool guy. Like he's doing some cool things. Just a normal man, just a regular dude, and we're just caught up in a world back then where we're both lucky it didn't get us killed.
Isn't that crazy that two people can collide, and both of them, as you say, are wearing some sort of a mask and adhering to certain laws in subcultures, but underneath, both of them generally didn't want to be in that position at the same time. It's really intriguing how things can get carried away.
For sure, man. For sure.
I always found the crossover between writers and lad culture back then and raves really interesting. Raves were really, they made a few appearances in the book, but it was really quite a big thing back in the day, wasn't it? To go to raves, and there was quite a big subculture around that.
It was. It was the raves was front left speaker was where we'd meet up,
Front left
and
speaker.
Yeah, front left, and we're just all the riders were there, all the lads, all there, just getting on it and fighting, thieving, carrying on, gabbering, and it was like, man, I think back to those times and it's funny, it puts a smile on my face. I can just see the boys, see the people that people hanging around, and it was a massive part of it as well, just through that time, and then. I was raised most weekends. We were just it was an extension. It was an extension. It was just it was just sort of like a little a branch of the writing. It was a part of it, and we'd meet other writers. Some of them that we'd be sweet with, others that we'd have beef with, and it'd just be on either way. And it was a big extension of it. And I think though those times of the drugs there, the party drugs, and it was another form of the this trying to silence the inner demons, the distraction piece, the feeling good for those moments, the feeling happy for those moments, which was sort of trying to hide. Well, for me, I can only really speak for me, but it was about trying to hide from some deep trauma, from some deep thoughts, and the drugs. Some people, I'm so thankful for myself back then that ice and all that stuff wasn't really big back then. And I always there was people having I think it was shabs back then or whatever shabs. I think it's the same thing. I don't even know, but
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
I had the offer. It was just always a boundary that I kept. Always a boundary that I kept, and I'm thankful because I've seen some good men get taken by it.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think most people have. It's scary stuff. I guess ecstasy was the drug of that era, in a lot of
Yeah,
ways, wasn't it?
exactly. It was. It was.
You actually
Yeah.
talk about in your book an incident that took place at a rave involving, I think it was a friend of yours.
Yes.
Do you speak about that event when you speak at schools to try and highlight the dangers of drug use and how quickly things can go bad,
Yeah. Sometimes, depending on some
depending on
schools,
age?
yeah, not and yeah, age or like some schools have specific target uh, topics that they want me to really focus in. Some have drug and alcohol issues. Some have, and yeah, I do touch on that because it was a big event and something again another traumatic experience of a friend just dropping off drugs just there for the listeners to listen in as well to understand some repercussions. It's not like they haven't heard this stuff. Everyone's gone through some stuff, but I suppose it can be even just a seed for a young dude that may be listening to this to sort of help them change a path.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. It seems like, and after all those chaotic years, obviously you've completely turned your life around. And nowadays you speak at schools, you ran a gym for a while. I know in that sort of transitionary period, you had a couple of amateur boxing fights and you even won the state title for boxing.
Yeah.
So you really did make some ground in terms of, and are continuing to make ground in terms of stepping away from, the Luke Kennedy that existed in that world. The process of change specifically, though, it seems like it was a bit of a grind for you. And I think that's the reality of change, is that it really is a grind. For you, it was a series of events. It was quite a long process, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's ongoing, bro. Even now, like it's if we're not growing, we're dying.
For sure.
I I speak. I'm open with the students too. Like I talk about the ones when we're talking about drug and alcohol, especially. I tell them my journey of sobriety over the past 15 years. I've made mistakes. I've I've bended. I've gotten blind. I've carried on. I've made mistakes. I'm not and and throughout our lives we're going to continuously, I don't want to put that out there, but there's going to be mistakes made, and it's about getting those gaps of mistakes to get wider and learning more from them when they do happen.
Mm.
So when I speak to the students and I say I've bended, it's been a long time now, but I've bended, and I don't stand in front of you pretending I'm perfect, and I I've learned a lot through my mistakes. I've learned a lot through my successes as well. And both of those things combined is what I try to instill in the message to open their eyes up to both sides. And I even the drinking. So the drinking, in my family, my grandma was an alcoholic. There's different alcohol in my family is a pretty big one, and I don't drink all year. When I turned things around, I had 3-4 years off the grog. Didn't touch it. Now I don't touch any, like, no grog throughout the year, but I'll have in December, usually around sort of Boxing Day or New Year's or whatever it is. I'll have a big blowout, and it makes me realize why I don't do it. So there's things that in my life.
Unintentionally, you think, or is it sort of like a period where you allow yourself to have a few Chrissy beers, or
Yeah. It's like, what, I've had a good, and it's good vibes, good. Everyone's out and about, and because throughout the year, I'm just, no, it doesn't even come within my aura. It's not even a possibility. But then what happens is, I'm like, you know what, I can deserve a couple of drinks. I might go on a date, share a bottle of wine, right? I'm like, oh, that's good. I can handle the grog. I'm like, cool. I can have a couple of drinks and go home. And then what will happen? Like, it'll be a couple of drinks, and then I'll go out waking up, then a couple of drinks. This is maybe throughout December for maybe a week, right? And then I'm like, you know what, bang, and I'll just all of a sudden just be a big blowout where I'll just get blind. It's like this little creeping up to it. So there's still some stuff there that, a weakness of mine that I not need to master. I need to stay away from, because the grog's a big one. The grog one is, and so it's, yeah. There's still mistakes made there with me. I don't fight anymore. I don't carry on with all that sort of stuff. But it's still, my demons come back when I'm hungover, and it's like it weakens me. It's the only time I ever feel really weak is after the grog. So I'm gonna scrap it. Like, it's over the past 2 years, I've had 2 drinks and 2 big blowouts. So now it's, yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to be gone forever, but it's definitely not in my life as anywhere near what it used to be.
yeah, I think that's really important, man, to highlight. And I'm really glad to hear you say that you do highlight that it is an ongoing process. This
Yes.
process of being a better person and changing, because I think, I've been through periods of my life where I've tried to, make changes in my life. And sometimes if you fuck up, you really think, well, that's it. It's not possible. I can't change. But the idea that it is ongoing, it sort of comforts me to hear that, because it's true. It's not something that you can just wake up tomorrow, and that's actually probably a good way to never change, is to think that things are going to happen straight away.
Yeah, well said, man.
Because the first time you do fuck up, you would just fall back into old habits and then not bother again.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really important, I think.
Yeah, and the boxing, that the box the values and the just the life lessons that I went through boxing is a big one with that, because sometimes you go, like, you'll be training hard and you'll be sparring well, and you're like, fuck, and I can be a world champion or whatever, and then the next spar.
That's me after a day of training.
Yeah, hold on to that confidence, bro.
Yeah.
It's good. And then, but then a spa, you might be a little bit off. One day at the gym, you might get touched up by a young bloke, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've got nothing. What am I doing? Like, why am I even wasting my time fighting? But it just goes, it just goes to show, like, whether the world championship that you think you might get, or the give it up, you can't get attached to either outcome, and you just got to step up and get back to the gym the next day, and from there, just so many life lessons there, man. And the boxing world is just something I can't be more thankful for. There's some interesting heads around the gyms. Yeah,
Yeah, I can
but
imagine.
but just just my trainers as well, the people, my brother, my dad, the people that have been in my life through boxing, and Johnny Lewis as well, an incredible man. Just the people in my life that have been through around boxing, and the things that it's instilled in me, I can't be more thankful for.
Yeah, I can imagine the routine plays a big role, and discipline as well would play a big role in that period of life where you're trying to become, change old ways. As you said, things aren't always going to go your way, but the routine of showing up to a gym, getting in the ring, or just doing your sit-ups or whatever, that routine sort of, you can battle through the times when you think it's not going to work out, or whether it is, as long as you're showing up.
Yes,
That's a really important message, I think.
exactly. Showing up, man. Exactly.
How important do you think just, you know, aside from boxing, but just physical training. I know you opened up a gym and you were training other people and ended up getting your personal training certificate. How important do you think it is for people that are looking to change to incorporate some sort of physical exercise or training during that period? Do you think it's an important part of transformation?
Bro, it's one of the most important. Definitely moving your bodies, and because if you're static, and just sort of not training or not, not moving your bodies into some form of exercise, static bodies, static energy, static thoughts, nothing's really moving, nothing's really flowing. And when you start exercising, you start moving your bodies, it starts, expanding your energy, your endorphins start flowing, your confidence starts boosting, you meet some other people that are training, you're out in the sun even, you smile, you're more present. Like when I was boxing, the world could be ending outside that gym and I wouldn't even know. All I'm there is just this present filled moment, just punching the bag, punching the pad, punching someone else. It was just this. It's total. It's like an active meditation. So you're training, whether it's lifting. Now I lift a lot. It's just lifting or moving. It's your exercise is yeah, right up there for any form of mental health, confidence, and expression. I definitely get your bodies moving.
I guess the initial part of from going from not training, and I find this as well when I go through periods of going to the gym, the initial period is obviously the hardest, and that's the one that turns myself and so many other people away. Is just those first few weeks are such a grind and hard to motivate yourself. But as you said, once you break through that, barrier of just it becoming routine, it's like a door opens up and you really do feel better mentally and able to take on life in a new way just from moving your body. It's like a magic pill really that's available to everyone.
Definitely. Well, unless it's endorphins, you're happy. It's a drug without the come down.
I know you had periods of to and froing as you were describing before,
Yes.
particularly after a trip to Thailand. Can you describe that period of life and what happened to you in Thailand?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was flying, man. Before like I gave up the grog, gave up the alcohol. So gave up the drugs, gave up the alcohol. Uh, Not seeing the crew as much. Not partying. Like not seeing the crew. Not painting. I stopped painting because I got pinched in Melbourne and got raped. Anyways, I'll get back to that. But um, life was going great. I was training hard. I just won my first 3 fights by knockout, by the way. Have to add that in. And
Of
there goes
course.
that ego again. My brother, like I just joined the Navy too. I joined the Navy, bro. And there was a few issues with my record at the start, but supplying references, I was doing some work with some youth. I got some good references. Oh, bang, I'm in the Navy. Sweet. So life was set, bro. Into the Navy, boxing, set. So then my brother convinces me to go to Thailand as like one last party before I'd start getting into training for the Navy. So go to Thailand with him. And after living clean for so long, I party, bro, pretty hard this one night. Get on a score coke, get blind drunk, jump on a motorbike and I got sort of hit, sideswiped by a truck, like this like taxi truck sort of thing, and broke both bones in my leg. They pierced the skin, broke my hip, my pelvis, and my jaw. And yeah, it was massive, man. And so, long story short, like there was some big things that happened throughout that point. But long story short, I get back to Sydney, and uh, I fall back down, start putting because I lost 50 kilos to get to start boxing, and start putting the weight back on, and it was like just getting back down in that hole, man. And probably about 2 weeks into it, I should have been in recovery. I was still in recovery, but I got blind, and um, one of the main man, someone he was in the city, and he's like, "Come out, bro. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm coming out." He said, "Aren't you still recovering?" I said, "No, it's all good." So I jump on my moto. I was supposed to be. I put my crutches. It was just a wrecking ball, bro. I put my crutches down next to my motorbike and jump on my bike. Just head into the city, blind drunk again.
Fucking
And
wild, man.
yeah, bro. Yeah, I apparently got into a fight or something in there. And I wake up the next morning. I'm at home. Don't know what happened. How I got home, and I lift my leg up, and I could feel my foot still on the bed. And I looked down, I snapped the plate in my leg, bro, and it was hanging out of my leg. I don't even remember what happened. So I had to go have another operation. So back to square one there. And then I ended up putting like 40 kilos, nearly 50 kilos back on the drugs, back on the benders, back robbing people. I was just down, bro, back into the heavy hole and back into it. And, there's so many turning points though. There's, do I stay down? Do I play the victim for the rest of my life? I was going to join the Navy, but then, the motorbike accident pulled me, or just fucking get back up, bro. Get back up. And obviously I got back up and I continue to rise now. And there was some big setbacks during that time, but coming back from that accident, my boxing trainer knew I was back down. Like his name's Al Sykes. Like he's an incredible man, and he's at the moment his health isn't the best, but I just want to send some love to him. He's like, Punchy, get you back in the gym, mate. We've got to get you a fight. We've got to get you boxing. We've got to get you back on track. So I get back into the gym, and he goes, mate, the state titles are coming up in a few months. We're putting you in. We're putting you in. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sweet, bro. I'm still not sure that I could fight again with my injuries, whatever. But he knew, that boxing was there for me, and that was an integral part of my life to help me. And I just need to get back in. So then I'm training hard, man, getting back into it. And
you lost the weight again?
Lost all the weight again. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, lost all the weight again. I was a bit of an extremist, man. I'll just make things happen.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And so training hard, sparring hard, and he enters me into the state title. And the state titles is like a round robin. It's like sort of Karate Kid over the, you win a fight, you progress to the next thing,
On the same day.
Or same day or next day. Actually, boxing, you can't fight on the same day. You fight the next day. So, and then you keep going. So I think you can fight. Okay. Anyways, so I think you can't have more than 2 fights. And
on one day, yeah.
Yeah. So then he enters the state title, and leading up to it, there's another guy from a gym in Bondi who was a hottie. He was in my weight range as well. I was 81 kilos, light heavyweight at that time. And he was undefeated too. He was knocking blokes out. And we knew eventually we'd sort of cross paths, but and one of the guys at our gym, Junior Talapu, great fighter, great man. He was training. He'd go to their gym on occasions, and they bet Junior that he'd knock me out. And the boys took the bet. So then the first fight of the thing, he was in a different group. So the first fight, I won my fight by knockout. He won his fight by knockout. Second time, the same thing happened. And then to get into the final, I knocked my guy out in the first round. And after my fight was his fight. So it was the other semi-final, and he did the same. He knocked his guy out the first round to get in the final as well.
The stage is
set. Oh, what? It's like game time. And
particularly, I mean, it's quite, I'm not a boxer, but I can imagine it's quite a hard thing to do, to knock someone out with 16 ounce or 12 ounce gloves on.
10
ounce. Okay. Yeah.
10 ounce. And we are and because there was that many in our division, we couldn't fight that weekend. So it was planned for a couple of weeks later at this big pro-am event, this big event it was big for me anyways, at Randwick. I think it was the uni or something. Anyways, so leading up to that, for those 2 weeks, I'm like, oh, this, and my brother, dad and brother both won that same title, the New South Wales amateur title.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they're like, don't let the family down, give me some shit. Bit of pressure. Yeah, no pressure at all. Anyways, the night of the fight, bro, and this is just coming back from Thailand, coming back from a harshness of my past, and turning things. I'm sitting in the dressing room, and my old man's in there with me, sort of rubbing my shoulders, and brother's in the room, and dad gets all his mates in to introduce to me. Like, just could see how proud he was, just how proud. Like I put that man through so much. And now he's like just so proud, bringing people in just to meet his boy who's fighting in the state title final. And I'm like, this is the best. And my brother's there. My brother was in my corner that night. And as we're walking out, the other guy, there was smoke machines and everything. It was hectic. It was so good, bro. And their trainer's gone, "You're finished," like screaming out, like dreaming up our boys, "You're finished." So we get in the ring, and I was like, "Whew, this is it." I'm looking over my opponent, and he like I said, both undefeated, both just ready to rumble. And technically, watching him fight, he was a better fighter than me. Technically, as a boxer, he was a better fighter than me, but I suppose, a better boxer. I was a fighter. He was a better boxer, technically a better boxer. And first round, he wins. He breaks my nose the first round.
Shit.
Yeah, and and when we were sort of tied up, I could feel how strong he was. I was like, "Face this dude," and your mind, your mind. It's interesting, like watching the mind. It jumps in. You're gonna get beat this, but then just sort of pushing that aside and coming back to presence, And then so he won the first round. Second round, I won the second round. So going into the last round, it was whoever really wins the last round wins the fight. And I'm spent. Like it was the toughest fight, and blood clarets everywhere, and my brother's in the corner. It was movie material, man. And my brother, like, "Please, bro," just begging me, and I'm like, you're begging for air, you're gasping, you're gone, and he's like, "Brother, please, man, come on, work the body, you've got to, please, bro, you fucking want it." And I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "We'll fucking get it." And so we go out last round. My dad's there. My Johnny Lewis, who grew up, he wasn't supposed to. He was there. Like it was just the perfect setting. And then I go in, like we're sort of in close, and then we get separated. And I throw this right hand to his body, and he drops his hands a bit, and then I just go, it's over the top. Drop this right hand on him, and next thing he's out my feet. So I drop him, and the crowd, my brother, my dad, and I get like pushed away to the corner. I'm wiping the blood off my nose, and
must have been quite a moment.
Oh, what? Anyways, he takes a knee, and he's going 8, and he gets back up, and he's tough, man. And he comes back, and throws a few combinations, and then gets separated again. And I come back in and throw the same shot, this big overhand right, and his eyes roll on the back of his head. He sort of leans down and holds on. The ref jumps in and just stops the fight. And I was like, it was the best, happiest, like most fulfilling moment of my life. I'm in the corner, my dad's there, my brother, and it was just like this whole the journey of the past. It was like, okay, this is it. This is time to really focus. There's no turning back now. And it was amazing, man.
Incredible, man. Yeah, and that was for the state title, New South Wales state title.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Title.
Yeah, that must have been a big night for you, man, in that period of your life.
It was big. It was.
What do the skills of street fighting translate very well to the boxing ring?
Nah, not at all, bro. Not at all. I suppose the heart does.
I can imagine that does for sure.
That does, but the fitness, the technique, nah, man. I remember sparring my brother for the first time, like going up to the gym and sparring. I was like, bro, like, because he's smaller than me, he's tiny, man. At that point, I was 80 kilos. He was fighting at 63, so he was just tiny. And I go, bro, am I allowed to hit you hard? And he goes, if you can. And I was just like, I thought I was just going to pump him.
Yeah.
And
20 kilos, it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've had, I'm like, I had all these street fights, only lost one. And let's get to that defeat too in a second.
Yeah, for sure. I was just about to ask you about that.
I was, but then that spar, he pumped me. Like he
That's that.
Yeah. My not my younger, my older brother who's just tiny, he pumped me, and it, because the street fighting doesn't translate at all to boxing. That's like when I could still box because my dad would taught me a few things. That's why early on when Schemo and I we boxed in front of everyone, he could street and stuff, but I had a bit of technique, and technique in boxing is priceless.
It would have given you an advantage at many points. Yeah.
Sure.
So tell me about the street fight that you lost. I did read about that in your book, but tell me what happened that day.
Talk about an ego check, man. At 10 on steps again.
Do you remember? Yeah, a lot happened at those steps.
Oh, what?
They were Yeah, even in my sort of teens, yeah, it was a big thing. Like you either wanted to go there or you definitely didn't want to go there.
Yeah, it was our sort. Growing up watching like Star Wars and stuff. I was like, we want it, and writers bench, like we wanted the writers bench, or whatever. Like
Exactly,
so,
yeah. What year, just to get some context, what year do you think that was when you the story that you're about to tell?
2005.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, 2005. I was being like the main fighter on there, Tunnel Steps, and there's a bunch of young lads around. People didn't know that they're from the local area, and one of them was giving shit to one of the younger boys, and I jumped in and said to matey that was giving shit to one of the younger boys, and I said something, and he told me, oh no, he said something that I didn't like, and I whacked him, and and he had heaps of peeps with him too. But everyone's like, leave it one on one, and it's what I'd hear often when I'd been in a fight. Leave it one on one, because our boys had confidence that I could handle myself. Anyways, I remember him sort of went to throw something or whatever, and then I'm standing there, and then next minute I'm sort of tripping over George Street, and one of the boys is like holding onto me, and I'm looking at him, like, bro, what happened? What's going on? And it was just mayhem. What's going on? He goes, get in the cab, get in the cab. I get in the cab, and I could feel my back of my head busted, my lip busted. I go, what happened? He goes, bro, you got knocked out. I go, someone dog shot me. Like, just hoping it was that. There's matey that you had to go with. He just put this right hand on my chin and just lights out. And I was like, oh, what? And this was in front of everyone. And he was a young lad too. He was just a young guy, younger than me, young guy. And I was like, what? And I had to go to hospital because when I was knocked out, one of his mates ran over behind it. One of them had like one of those razor scooters and swung it and smashed me in the back of the head with it.
Fucking
And
hell.
yeah, I've got this big. The back of my head's pretty caved in because of that. And I had to go to hospital again. And some of the boys rocked up and like, bro, it's because you were on the pills. You just off your head. I'm like, nah, lads, I got. They were just trying to help me out with an excuse or something. I was like, nah, bro, he just got me. He got me. And for ages, I'm like, tell matey, like, knew other friends. I'm like, tell him let's have another crack, or want to have another crack. It didn't end up happening, but yeah, it was.
He was happy to take his win and
be
done with it.
You got me. Yeah. So there was chips. There was things that happened back then that chipped away at that image, man. That chipped away at the front, the ego, and looking back, they're all sort of stepping stones to chipping away at that, to ultimately come back to self.
Yeah, it's crazy how, I mean, in that moment, I guess you probably could have never convinced you that would have been a good thing for you. But ultimately, times like that really made an impact down the line when you decided to turn your life around.
That's right. And releasing the boxing too, the fighter, the last boxing fight.
Yeah, so tell me about that. I know, you said you had a boxing match and you actually had some people from your gym, Punchy's gym, come and watch you, and it didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
Tell me about that night and what it did to you sort of mentally moving forwards.
Yeah, man. Like we said earlier, the idea of being a boxer instead of street fighter was still my way of holding on the fighter image, and I think God knew, had a different plan for me to understand but we had to totally get rid of that, and it was hard, man. I started the gym. We had heaps of members. It was this really good community gym, and they always knew me as the boxer. I sort of heard stuff from my past. My book hadn't been out by then yet, but they had heard rumors about my past and knew I was a boxer and won the title and whatever. And like, look, because I stopped boxing for about 3 years, 4 years because of the business. And they're like, why don't you come back? We'd love to see you fight. We'd love to see you box. I go, no, it's not him, man. I love my. And then they're like, come on, please. And then I started punching the bag a bit. And I was like, what? Yes. And then in my head, I'm like, yeah, cool. Imagine like, fighting and getting back into it and beating someone in front of all these people or my gym members. It'd be a big event. They'd all come and watch me. So anyway, so they did. I
What could go
organized
wrong?
yeah, what could go wrong? Exactly. I'm this fighter. And and so I scheduled a fight of like 10 weeks. And leading up to it, there was posters at the gym. Luke Kennedy's fighting, and here we go. Yes, I'm a fighter, and posting about it online. Come watch me fight. All this shit. And and the night of the fight, man, I'm like all my members were there. Heaps, 100 people. It was just chockers. Hundreds of people were there. Just there was massive, but a lot of them were there to watch me beat this guy. Though I'm the fighter, and when I was warming up before the fight, I just felt really flat. I was like, "Whoa, what's going?" I just didn't know how. And I'm walking out, and I'm like, I didn't even feel like wanting to fight, like beat someone. I'm like, this thing's left me. I'm like, what's and I could feel my mind already sort of just going, "Oh, bro, this is gonna be. What are you doing? What's happening?" And as I get in the ring, and I fought terribly. I fought I fought absolutely. It wasn't that I got beat. I just fought terribly and got beat. And after it, I felt like this again a big fraud. Like all these, and I'm like, oh, when I was in the dressing room, bro, I couldn't even walk out. I couldn't even go out and see everyone. And some came in there and said, "Oh, well done." And then for weeks after that, man, I couldn't even talk about boxing. I didn't even want to hold classes. I didn't want to hit the bag. I was like, because I'm teaching boxing at the gym, man. I'm teaching people how to train, and then all of a sudden I fought terribly, and I'm like, oh, I felt like this what a joke. And
I was going to ask, how was it going back to work after that sort of ego check? It must have been difficult.
oh, tough. And there was I was even driving. There was times I'd drive in my car and I'd punch the steering wheel. Why'd you fight? Why'd you come back? You should have just left it. And this went for ages. I was losing sleep and everything, man. And then I actually reached out to Paul Briggs, uh, who a fighter, Aussie fighter, and his last fight. He got hit with like a temple shot, something. It was just like a glancing punch, and he got knocked out, and everyone said he threw the fight, and he looked like a weak fraud, and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, how can? And this was on TV. This is all international stuff. So I contacted him to ask him how he dealt with it. Like, what'd you do, bro? Like, what happened? Like, mum was an amateur. So he calls me.
Wow.
Yeah, he calls me
What
up.
was his advice?
You know what he said to me? His brother, it comes back to self-love, man. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's this shit? Like, he goes, I want you to look in the mirror. And I'm like, this guy's off his head. I want you to look in the mirror and look into your eyes and give yourself love. Tell yourself you love yourself. I'm like, fuck. What do you mean? You're a boxer, lad. What are you talking about? What's this hippie's lost the plot? I think you've been knocked out too many times. That's what I was thinking, And off your head. So then I tried it a couple of times, right? And I just felt like a dickhead. But then just having some deep moments of just staring in my eyes, it 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 got me out of my head. And because it felt, the reason why it feels weird if we stare at ourselves, stare at our eyes, is because we've lost connection with ourselves. We're just too stuck up in our heads. And so connecting with myself, just looking in my eyes, like I felt better, but nothing, like there was no real big bang change. But then I don't know if it was a stepping stone from that, but I'm laying in bed one night and I just looking up, staring at the ceiling, and I just had this big realization that is what had to happen for me to finally release the idea of being a fighter. And because that is not who you are. That is not your identity. That does not make you a good person. That does not make you a bad person. That does not make you strong. That does not make you well known. That is nothing compared to who you really are deep down as a beautiful spark and individual. And I was like, wow. And so then I just had this moment of just all of a sudden, everything just went, oh, my whole body just relaxed. And
Just lifted off you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? And I speak to the students about the idea of looking into your eyes, and I tell them that a champion boxer told me this, but I haven't reached out to Paul Briggs since. I should. I want to reach out and actually thank him. So if you're listening to this, bro, thank you.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure, man. That's a really good I mean, it's a simple sort of method, isn't it, to think differently, just to look at yourself and start asking those questions. And I guess the reason that you felt the way you did after that fight was again due to the fear that you weren't living up to a certain persona and a certain image, much like years and years before where you were trying to live up to a different image.
That's right. That's right. Because when that image crumbles, well, not crumble. When that image we don't live up to it, then we think we're failures, and or we think we're not good enough, or we think we're stupid, we think we're whatever it is. So that's where the issue is. There, the attachment to the identity.
Yeah, man. And an event like that, it's funny how when you look back on things and you really think the whole world is in this one moment, and it's just the end of the world. But looking back, you see how insignificant certain things are, even though at the time they seem so important. But it's almost impossible to really understand that in a moment where you've got lots of people looking at you, and a big event like a boxing event, it's hard to sort of look beyond that. Tell me a little bit about your friend. In the book you named him Lucas. I don't know if that's his real name.
Luca, yeah,
Luca, is it?
yeah.
He was an interesting character in your book, man. I guess he sort of existed outside of the tough world you were living in. But by the way you spoke about him in the book, it tells me you've got a great deal of respect for him. He seemed to be, in the context of the story at least, he seemed to be aware in some ways of what you were going through, but also he seemed to really believe in your ability to change. And obviously that's speculation. I'm just talking
No, you're right. Yeah.
from your book. I guess ultimately he was right as well. He gave you a book. Can you tell listeners the name of that book and why he gave it to you, or why you think he gave it to you?
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning him, man. Does deserve a mention. And
Yeah, he really stood out amongst all the characters. There was something about his place. I guess it was the fact that he was sort of giving you little tidbits of things that you hadn't really, the stuff that he was asking you to think about was quite unusual for you at
yeah,
that time.
for sure. His name's Luka Adzic. He's an incredible man, great man. We we grew up like playing cricket together, just kids, and then he started seeing the path that I was going down, and with the crew, and he'd never come out. He'd come out with a crew sometime, but then see a fight and just leave. He goes, "But I'm not sticking around for this stuff, man." And he'd always like uh, look down at and just not like I'd tell him a story and there was no like cool reaction from him. He'd be like even shaking his head. That's not good, bro. Like he'd be just totally blunt with me.
The tough love in a little way.
Yeah, yeah. And one night I remember um, I headbutted a guy in front of him, and all the guys were like, "Yeah, blah blah blah." And then after it, I was sitting in the car with him. He goes, "Bro, I love you, man." I said, "I love you too." He goes, "But you know what? You turned into one of those people. You turned into one of those people." I said, "Who?" He goes, "Those guys we grew up hating."
Wow.
And I was like, "Whoa."
He was right, wasn't he?
"Yeah." I was like, "Whoa." And then he'd always talk about, "Bro, you're attracting all this stuff. It's because the energy that you're putting out, the universe is delivering." And I was like, "You're off your head, lad." And he'd always talk about the universe and the power of the universe and the power of the thoughts and the power of the ego. He'd always talk about all this stuff, all this spiritual stuff, right? And I had no idea about it. Like, you're off your head, whatever. And then my dad, uh, my dad's best mate, incredible Aboriginal man, Frank Keane, was a mentor of mine growing up. What a great man. He's passed on now. An incredible man. He sort of knew what I was going down as well. And he gave me a book called the way this, no, this, the book was The Superior Warrior, I think it was called. And anyways, I read like, he goes, "Please, bro, I want you to read this." And I said, "Yeah, cool." So I read like a chapter of it, and it was talking about the universe and all that stuff. And I was like, "This is rubbish." So I gave it to my mate Luca, I'm like, brother, you're going to love this book. He goes, what, did you read it? I said, yeah, bro, it talks about the universe. You're going to love this shit. He goes, all right, cool. So he reads it. He goes, I can't believe you read this book, bro. And then that Christmas, I didn't.
And you
That
haven't read
Chris,
it.
yeah, I didn't read it. That Christmas, he goes, man, I got your present. He goes, because you like that book, this one, this is for you. And he gives me the book, The Power of Now. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And because he thought I read that other book. So he gives it to me. And I didn't look at it for however long, whatever. And then I started, felt compelled to read at least a bit of it so I could talk shit about it to him, to pretend I read it. So I read the first bit of it and I had no idea what it was about, bro. No idea. It was just like, it was a different language really to me. And later on, I picked it up again and it changed everything. It changed the boxing in that book is what changed my life. And the book, and it continues to change my life, that book. And Eckhart Tolle, because he says it at the start as well. He goes, the mind is going to try to compare and understand this book and compare it to other things and try to understand it. He goes, but the analytical mind, it doesn't have the capacity really to understand what is being said here. You've got to really read it with your heart and even and with your soul, and just try to drop the mind and just read. And even reading that, my mind was going bullshit, but then sticking with it, bro, and that's what changed my life. And I used a lot of his teachings in my speaking and also in my books. So it was a game change from that moment on.
Interesting. Yeah, a friend of mine, shout out to my friend Zach.
What's up, Zach?
He gave me that book a long time ago, and I guess I sort of had the same experience. I read it, and even at that time, I wasn't exactly I didn't just shun it away. I was reading sort of similar stuff. I wasn't averse to that type of thing, but I really just couldn't understand it, and I sort of put it on the shelf for a while. And then I guess after hearing you talk about the book, I decided to get the audiobook. I can't find my hard copy, but I'm going to get another one. But it is one of those books that really, I can imagine you would need to read a few times to understand the concepts. And it's interesting. He even says, I think he says it at the start of the book, that I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact wording, but he says basically, I'm going to say the same thing over and over again. It's the concepts that you need to try and understand. And sort of the main premise of the book is the tricky thing to wrap your head around, and it is really tough. I think the audiobook is not the way to go for me anyways, because I get distracted while I'm listening to it.
His voice puts you to sleep too.
Yeah, he's got a nice voice. He does. But can you, and I'm not going to ask you to explain the book, because it is hard to explain, but can you tell me what you got out of the book and how you've implemented it into your speeches and your own life?
For sure. So what the journey that I take, just painting a picture of it, sort of the overall concept of it, of kind of what I do in my talks, the journey that I take, whether it's a primary school, whether it's a high school, businesses, prisons, I speak at whatever it is, it's I take them on the path. I show how when each and every one of us come into this world, we're that pure state, the clear mind, unlimited opportunities, possibilities, creativity, joy, love, potential, whatever we want to achieve out of this life, right? And it's when we come into this state, we're just this pure being. But, and a big but, as we go along, through when we're 3, 4, 5, 6, the energy that we're feeling, the things we're observing, the words that we're hearing, the beliefs that we're taking, we're like a sponge. We're just so open. Our minds, our frequency is so subjective, whatever it is. We're so open to receiving information and for it to be stored.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever we're feeling, whatever we're seeing, whether it's around money, whether it's around religion, whether it's around beliefs, whether it's around negativity, we are storing that information. So what that does is, so then we're going on and we get, okay, that negative belief, okay, that thought, okay, this thought here, okay, this label, okay, this past. So it starts taking us away from our pure state, and we start painting this picture of this story in our minds of this person who we think we are. And then it just gets even bigger. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then all of a sudden, this negative belief. Then this person said this about us. Then this person called us fat. Then this person called us dumb. And And then my parents said, don't do that because that person over there's watching. Okay, now I worry what people think. Okay, now I can't do that because it'll embarrass me. Okay, I got up to stand in front of class and I made a mistake and people laughed at me. Okay, the idea of standing up and speaking, not doing that. So then it starts taking us away from that pure state. And I show throughout my talks, through my cool stories that about the stabbings, about the fights, about graffiti, about all that stuff, that the labels that I picked up were fighter, this image, dumb because I was failing, victim, addict, criminal, and all these and gang member and all these labels and all these limitations form the ego, form the false self, form the voice in the head of the person who we think we are, form the limitations. And then that pure state, who we are deep down, is just smothered and gone and is just like is strangled by this false self. And to become aware of the false self is the first step towards relinquishing it. Not like it's hard, it's never going to be gone, but it's to become aware, to lessen it, and to make decisions based on the true self rather than the immediate actions of the ego.
Wow, yeah. It's a really interesting concept, because I guess a defense mechanism for getting through life is relying on that person that we've built up in our minds. So the idea that might not be the best way to go about things, and to really break down and break through that stuff, it's sort of confronting it in a lot of ways. Correct. Because we hang on to our personality and our images so strongly. To think of letting those go is really I mean, it's tricky business, but yeah, I totally understand, man.
Yeah, because that's all it is. The mind's just like a defense mechanism. It's like to keep us, to keep trying to keep us safe, but really it's imprisoning us. And so I relate it back. So I'll show those labels, but then depending on the audience, I'll relate it back to some of the labels that they maybe living up to. The students may be fat, even the hot girl, the hot guy, that then all of a sudden all I'm known for is my body or my looks, or the fat one, the ugly one. Or at a business, it could be, I speak at real estate quite a bit, it could be the top performer. Then all of a sudden, okay, I'm the top performer. Then I stop doing the little things that got me to the top performer. Then I start delegating phone calls because I don't have to do that sort of stuff. Then I have my head so far up my ass that I stop doing the little things that got me there. So it's just
true. Yeah.
Depending on the industry, depending on whatever it is, we've all got the labels, we've all got the false self, we've all got the past stuff that's happened to us and what we're blaming for why we can't do this today. So when we start identifying that, that's when we can start lessening it and start that journey back to purity.
Do you partake in any sort of daily practices that help you do that help you work your way through, I don't know the correct terminology, but I don't even know if there is one, but the ego-driven person that lives within us and the true self? Is there anything sort of in your daily life that you do to work through that?
There was 10 years of massive discipline in terms of structure. Like 10 years on and off. Like it wasn't just 10. I wasn't this like monk, soldier, bloody whatever. But there was mornings where I had my morning ritual of meditation, of reading. Reading was a big one for me. Of my exercise as well. It was just all simple stuff, right? It was just all simple stuff. The biggest one as well is your environment, is who you're with, who you're kicking, because you hear often, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. So and again, nobody's perfect, everyone's got their own path, but it was like me, I wasn't hanging out with anybody, I was kicking it alone a lot, and I was doing the self-exploration stuff. The reading was a big one for me. Reading changed my life. Writing as well, I love my writing now. I've got another couple of books coming out this year, so there's certain practices that I was doing, and even now I'm always changing, always evolving, and always understanding stuff in the boxing. But even now, it's not really learning anymore. It's not really reading. I'm not really. I'm still reading occasionally, but I'm not that big on reading anymore. At the moment, it's the understanding. It's the unlearning of more of the stuff that ultimately isn't serving me. And so I'm looking at more unraveling, more unlearning, just getting back, just stripping away, and finding that even the harsh emotions of the past, and hanging out with mentors as well. I've got a couple of strong mentors in my life that are sort of good paths to call me out on my bullshit as well. I've got a great man, actually. Let me give him a rap. His name is Dan Regan. this man, about what he stands for. Just he doesn't even really have to jump. Sometimes he calls, like, he does call me out a bit, even a suplex sometimes of a call out. But he just the embodiment of truth and his integrity and who he is as a man is something that I aspire to be. And what that just having good people in your life and that may call you out on your bullshit as well is another thing that helps us lessen the ego. And he's a big one. So his name's Dan Regan. If you want to check him out, I am Dan Regan on Insta. The stuff that he puts out there and his content, he's a great man.
Did you have a relationship in your sort of past life with him, or was he someone that came into your life recently?
Yeah, just recently. So, yeah. Only the past 6 months, I think. And when I was at cafes a lot by myself, but then he just popped up and saw him at the gym, and yeah, he's a man that's really changed a lot for me, a lot.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about mentors. Sometimes I'll watch successful people giving their opinions and advice on YouTube and stuff like that, just for motivation and out of interest. And you do hear a lot of them have mentors in their life, whether they're family, friends, or professional mentors. It's a really interesting concept, I reckon. And it's something that I don't know if. I mean, I've heard a few people say in those videos that sometimes it's just a case of reaching out to someone and say, "Hey, look, do you want to sort of connect and have a chat?" But it sounds like you really value those types of relationships as well.
Oh man, for sure. And it's as well having, because what it does is, well, having a mentor, like growing up through the harsh times, and even in my early 30s, I there was no real man, like, besides my dad. My dad's an incredible, like, I respect that guy, what he's done for me. But there was no man that I felt sort of subordinate to, that I looked up to, um, and that I took their advice and took their viewpoint as somebody that really is ultimately looking to help. It might be some heavy, like some calling me out on certain areas, but in the past, if somebody called me out on something, it was a fight, or it was like, somebody said I was doing something wrong, I would listen to them. I'd fight them or carry on. But now, releasing, because what it does is, having somebody call you out or have someone put you in a different, it's making you realize that ultimately you're not always right. And people can see your blind spots. Other people that kick it with you can see your blind spots, or whatever it is. But to be open to feedback and to open to be a mentor is the biggest part of the growth in a mentor, because you're open to taking on the feedback and open to seeing that ultimately you're not always right.
Yeah, it's very valuable, man, to be able to take on constructive criticism, for sure.
Yes.
Do you remember your first public speaking gig? Do you remember how you felt? Were you nervous going in? Because these days I don't know how much of your time you spend, but it seems like predominantly you speak to, as you said, real estates and students at schools. Is that what you spend a lot of your time on these days?
Yeah, it's full time. It's full time.
Full time, beautiful, man. That's really cool. Do you remember that your first or your first couple? I mean, how did you feel going from, I would assume public speaking for anyone's pretty difficult, but I know that you sort of struggled with that thing in the past.
Yeah. The social, like, that's another, being socially awkward as a young kid. And um, I, f- I f- I feigned my way into confidence around the crew. Around the crew, I could be strong and confident, but in around, like, normal people, I like awkward. And even starting at the gym, the idea of personal training somebody, a new person, I couldn't sleep the night before. Like, I couldn't speak to people. I didn't have that skill. I just, my mind, I was stuck in my head about, does my breath smell? Oh, do they think they're smarter than me? Or do I have something in my teeth? It was just always about me and stuck in my head. And so then when the book came out, the book went great, and it's the second edition's coming out. It's getting republished with some add-ons, and some, all this stuff is happening at the moment, which is great.
For sure. I'll just jump in quickly and say, just for logistical reasons, if anyone is interested in the book, the link will be in the show notes where you can buy a copy. And yeah, please go and read the book. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it.
It's pretty much it's all the stories of the graffiti scene, the early 2000s, the fights, the deeply introspective stuff about what we've been speaking about as well. So it's been great. It was so that the book came out in late 2014, and that went quick. And
Yeah, certainly.
A school teacher read the book. She's like, look, I'd love for you to come and speak to the students about your journey and your path and about the deep thoughts that you're having. I'm like, yeah, sweet. Not really wanted to say I can't do something and not work it out. Anyways, leading up to it, I even had the email drafted, man, to pull out. I was going to pull a sickie or something. I did not want it to. I was shitting myself. And
Yeah, fucking oath. I can't
yeah,
imagine.
it was Hurstville boys too, like a bunch of the boys from the hood, like year
Uh,
10, like
kids,
tough
man.
crowd
Kids
first up.
are
Yeah, yeah.
the most brutally
And
honest of crowds.
yeah, and so the mind creeps in, obviously. But then I was like, okay, get back to what helped me. And it was again the journey of purity, ego, back to purity. And I'm like, okay, how can I get that? How can I get them listening? Cool stories have got to be in there. I've got to get the emotion out. So I practiced, bro. A lot of I didn't do any courses. I didn't do any all that sort of stuff. I looked at some stuff on Google, and they're like, speak from your heart. Don't really. I'm like, how am I going to speak from my heart if I'm shitting myself? So I'm like, I'm going to rehearse. I'm going to practice. I'm going to get it down word for word. So I did that, and I rocked up, and it went great, man. It just really, the students were coming up after it, and I was like, whoa, this is it, and it's just evolved from there, and uh, now it's yeah, different industries, different audiences. It's every day. Like where am I now? I'm in Wagga. I was in Victoria yesterday. I'm going to Dubbo over the weekend, then all across Sydney, back up to it's everywhere, bro. I go on spaces all the time. So the next 4 weeks, it's pretty much speaking every day. Besides today, is pretty much
Interesting,
speaking
man.
every day.
So you've really found, I mean, for the time being at least, found a vehicle to sort of do what you want to do through the speaking. I'm sure you didn't foresee that even when you were writing the book. Was public speaking ever sort of on the cards? You know, or was it just that one teacher that brought it up that sort of opened up this world for you?
The person who helped with the publishing of the book, they're like, we're going to get you some talks at schools, and I'm like, oh yeah, like in mind, I'm like, I'm not going to do that, and because I'm like, what do I? There's so many bad guy gone good stories. It's just another one. I just don't want to be another stooge up there doing look at me after I did this. But the difference is there's cool stories, but I've got the deep introspective stuff, which opens up their minds. And some of the messages, man, like it's not just it's everything now. It's not that I'm a speaker. It's a purpose. This is the mission now. This is it. This is my purpose. This is the purpose. Not my purpose. This is a purpose, and because there needs to be like break the society, the way society is set up at the moment. There's a with mental health. I get some heavy messages from past schools or from schools that want me to come in with we're losing kids, and and if
As
I
in to suicide and things like that?
yes, yeah, to
Wow.
suicides, yeah,
Mm.
and there needs to be a shift. There needs to be, and there is a shift at the moment, and it's about instilling that belief in these kids, and I make it a point of really, I'm pretty passionate when I speak, and I drive it in, I look in their eyes. It's just instilling the belief of that there's so much opportunities and possibilities for these young people to lead that much needed shift in humanity, because we are reaching breaking point. We have reached breaking point, and and the empowerment of them, the resilience in themselves, the stepping up after the mistakes, and just getting it in their heads that they are good enough, who they are. That's the starting point. That's where we work from. Is about them not necessarily changing the world, but them changing themselves, so then the collective can raise up together. So it's about them being the best version of them. I know we hear that a lot, the best version of yourself, but that's what it comes down to, just boosting them up. And there's so many reasons why with mental health, there's some stuff out there, like with the technology and all this sort of stuff, but a lot of it comes down to there's resilience has dropped big time. Resilience of they're too scared to make a mistake, or they're getting uh, even uh, with the idea of boxing as well, being on your own 2 feet. There's a lot of I suppose when when people making mistakes, or even when you were talking about before, growing up, about saying, if they're doing something really good or doing something wrong, it's not pointing out the weaknesses or not pointing out. It's just sort of babying them into always feeling good. But they've got to know when, okay, you didn't win this time. Okay, you're not going to get a trophy just for rocking up, because throughout life, just rocking up isn't good enough. Just rock, it's a great start for sure, but there's things where we have to work hard at. There's things where we have to where we make mistakes. There's times in life, in sport, in business, in your grades, where you're going to fuck up, and 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 it's a part of it, and it's a massive part of it. It's a part of the growth. And if you're not making mistakes, which a lot of people are trying to shy away from, if you're not making mistakes, or if you haven't embarrassed yourself for a while, or if you haven't felt awkward recently, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. But we're a lot of people are, I suppose, encouraging youth, or encouraging people to play it safe, and it's I suppose it's dropping the resilience and the strength in a lot of our young peeps.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Especially, I mean, in the age of social media, the quickness with which someone can be chastised for making a mistake is really troubling, because you know, you need to be able to make mistakes, and how publicly you can be sort of confronted with your mistakes these days, or you know, with your personality, or you know, your online life and your real life are so interconnected now. I can imagine, you know, thinking of how I would be a school kid at the moment, or you know, over the past couple of years or whatever. You know, it would be easy to sort of shy away from really trying new things, or just because the ability to people to put it on show type of thing. But I think what you said about resilience is really important, man. I think resilience is one of the more important aspects of character building, especially in young people. And it's really nice to hear that you're pushing, you know, in your talks, the students to think about their own resilience and to try and generate some themselves. It's a tricky thing to do, man, but again, it's one of the more important things I think young people can have, is the ability to deal with tough times, basically, and the ability to push through. It's yeah, I mean, even with my own kids, sometimes, you know, a toy will get lost and it's World War III, and you know, I'm just thinking, how can I, and that's natural, of course, obviously every kid goes through that, but just to be able to instill, look, you know, you can get through this. The equivalent of this situation 20 years from now might be something a lot worse, so we need to learn how to deal with this thing. It's tricky, man.
It's just being real with them as well, saying that life isn't always going to be good to you. And I speak to it's as well. Because people can be assholes, and this is what I was saying to the high school students. I said, look, in primary school, people tease me, and I was like, maybe when I get out of primary school, hopefully the teasing stops. In high school, it didn't stop, and I was like, okay, maybe when I become an adult, hopefully it's guys throughout